My guest today is Michele Palmer, who has worked for big brands such as the Marriott and the Ritz-Carlton, but also now is working with small brands, literally down the road, small business who may or may not have a marketing budget, who may have champagne taste on a beer budget. And Michele is the brain that will help them actually get started. So welcome, Michele, to the Joe Show.
Thank you, Joe. I'm so happy to be here. You're right. My mantra is champagne and caviar marketing on a Coke and Cheerios budget. So that's that's pretty much it in a
We're here for
nutshell.
it. What's a piece of marketing, Michele, that's technically correct, but routinely wastes money for small business owners that you would like to flag from the outset?
I mean, I think the first one that just jumps in my head, and it's not that it's wrong or it's just not right for everyone, but social media just kind of jumps off the page at me. A lot of new businesses, entrepreneurs, small businesses, they jump in and say, I have to create content. It's just what I have to do. And, that's what they've learned. It's what people have told them. And so here they are spinning their wheels, putting out content, on a daily, weekly basis, and they're spending so much time and energy. Time is money, especially when you're a small business and you're entrenched in the operations, day-to-day operations, and now you're going out and you're creating content thinking it's working for your marketing. When a lot of people don't even quite know who their customer is or what makes them tick. And so they're not really putting out the message that needs to go out. They're just creating content for the sake of creating content. So that's the biggest one that kind of sticks out to me.
We know we should do it, but we forget step one. And
Mm,
you talk about psychographics and demographics and also how to frame what it is you're actually offering. And I
yeah.
actually want to just get into that straight away because it's
Yeah.
foundational. You can't put out a message if you don't know what the message is or who you're speaking to. So please walk us through that.
When I'm doing seminars or workshops with a lot of clients, um, I try not to use the marketing jargon like the psychographics, but that's exactly what it is. I use the term "What's in it for me," the WIFM, because it seems to resonate with people a lot easier, and it's really just what do they think and feel about a product? What motivates them to buy that product or service, and what frustrates them that your product or service is filling in that gap that's missing in the market, that product to market fit, that value proposition. You think about when you go and buy a pair of shoes. You shoes for a purpose. It's not because the company says we've been in business for 46 years. That doesn't do it for anybody. No one cares. I mean, that might hit on the trust factor a little bit, but the bottom line is people are purchasing that shoe because there's something in it for them, the what's in it for them. I'm a nurse, I'm on my feet all day long and I need comfort. I'm a C-level executive and I want people to know that I've made it to the top. So I'm going to go jam some, Louboutins on my feet so people know, that I've arrived. Or, I don't know, I'm 80 years old and I have bunions and I need comfort, that sort of thing. So there's a purpose behind, why people buy a product. And so that's it in a nutshell. And I think about, myself as a customer. And, I'm a Gen Xer through and through. I have fear of missing out. I impulse buy. I always experience buyer's regret. For some reason, maybe I spent too much money. And I think about something that, resonates with me on a regular basis is my fishmonger. And, he does these great videos on Facebook about, come in and purchase this fish that just flew in from New Zealand because we're only going to have it for the week. And I'm like, yes, I must have this fish. And so, and I have to get there quickly because I have this fear of missing out. So, it's things like that. And how do you position your product or service to resonate with that customer and get to the crux of what they're feeling and thinking?
So what's the first question you would ask somebody if they come to you at this point?
Let's see how much they actually know about their customer. When I say in a consultation, who do you think your customer is? And a lot of them immediately will say, oh, women age, 25 to 35, and they make a lot of money, and that doesn't really tell me a whole lot. And so when we sit down in consultation, we really try to drill down and and I find out more about what it is that their business does, starting with why they started their business, because a lot of times people who start their own business, there's a lot of meat there into reasons behind it and filling a need. And so from there, we can start pulling out some of that and saying, okay, let's talk about your customers now instead of the demographics. Let's start talking about the psychographics and what you know about that so far. I mean, if they're just starting out, we're making a lot of assumptions, and that's where, market research can kind of come into play, and we talk through market research. But if they've been in business for even just a few months, there's a lot that you can glean from just talking to your customers that are buying from you, or, finding those patterns of people that are purchasing, and just kind of getting down to the nuts and bolts of, oh, the women that you are providing this service to. And I'm just thinking about a recent consultation I did for it's a service that is kind of like a mammogram, but it's like an ultrasound. It just boiled down to women who just fear missing something by just doing the standard medical mammograms, and they want to take control of their their bodies and their what happens in the medical process. And sometimes when you sign up with your doctor, you're not getting all of those things. And so it's just kind of an example that I'm using, but really just understanding what makes them tick, what motivates them, and what's frustrating, what scares them, that sort of thing.
Instead of presenting the two things side by side with the technical aspects of each process, you've tapped into their feelings, and
Yeah.
being able to take control is always a very strong one because it
Yes.
alleviates the fear when you've got a plan. So they're really powerful ways through. Whereas if you just put some sort of whiteboard up explaining the features, it's not going to land until you've won their trust.
Yeah.
It's really, really good example there. Free tools for marketing. Google My Business listing, for instance. Walk me
Yes.
through what that looks like when it's done well.
So Google My Business is a great search engine optimization tool. If you have a website, your standard SEO that you're doing on page is great, but then that there are these what we call off site search engine optimization opportunities that you can take advantage of. And if you are a brick and mortar store or even a service based business where you have a particular area that you serve within, you can list your business on Google. It's a Google business listing. I think it used to be called Google My Business. I'm not really sure what it's even called anymore. They change it, flavor of
Business
the
dot
day.
business.google.com. Go
That's
there.
right.
See
Exactly.
what they're calling it this week.
And once you start creating your listing, you can put content on there as far as what events you have coming up or what your top products are that you're selling. Asking for reviews is huge because it's not only a trust signal for consumers who are on Google and see your business and oh, they got 50, you know 4.7 star reviews. That's great. But what it also does is it tells Google that you are a legitimate business. And so they will tend to move your business up the page. If you're ranking on page one of Google or even two, it will tend to move your business up the page if someone is searching for yoga studio near me. And you could come up in, I think they used to call it the 3 pack. I think it's called the map pack now. But the map shows, and it's right there on page one. If you're like a local service or a local business, and you're right there on page one, and you show up on the map, and the more reviews, legitimate reviews that you have, they tend to show you
Mm.
for people in your area near me.
It's just such an underutilized tool. Step one, website, and then put the listing up,
And yeah, and it's free. Like it is literally free to claim your business on Google and to ask people for reviews. And a lot of clients and consultations, I tell people, I know it's not easy to ask for reviews and it takes time. But every time a service or a product is purchased, go ahead and send out a follow-up email and say, how did we do? And can you share your experience with others on Google? And I work with a community theater in Atlanta, Georgia, and we've been working on that for 2.5, 3 years, and they're building a great, legitimate review kind of bucket there that Google can pull from and that people can see, wow, this is a really great theater. So,
Which then you can take those reviews and pop them into your social media as content, all for
yes. And
making
that's
making do
exactly
double
right.
duty. For small businesses using AI tools to generate content, what do you see them doing well, or how would you say they could do that better that's actually good quality content or good quality education for their prospective clients?
Yeah, I mean, there's so many AIs out there right now, but pick your poison, whatever you're looking to do, whether it's workflow or, taking notes. I find that creating content, you can use AI as a valuable tool. It's not cheating. A lot of people are like, well, I didn't write it and people are going to know. So I guide people with good prompts to start with. And it's a process because you have to teach the robot, and the robot is a collaborator. It's not going to do the work for you when it comes to creating content, because if you just let it create content, people know. They can see right through AI and social media posts or blog posts, and people are very smart, and they take that information as they're reading it, and they're like, well, they're using AI. Like, are they really that legit? But being able to guide somebody through the process of creating the content and how to start teaching the robot what your brand voice is really key. And I actually did a seminar probably about 2 months ago, probably, and it was just that. It was, working with your robot, and we went through step-by-step process of what is a brand voice, because a lot of people don't realize quite what that is, and, how to start teaching, AI what you're all about and what your brand is all about, and how that tone of voice should come across in your posts, in your content on your website, in your blogs, in your content on your podcast, whatever it is. And so that's really key, is teaching AI and collaborating with AI and making those tweaks along the way, because you can't just, let it run on its own. Like,
Mm.
you've built a whole system on AI for workflow. So it's not an overnight thing, but it definitely helps.
It's definitely not. And in a way, I don't like when people call it an intern because its IQ is higher than mine, that's for sure. And I haven't had any interns yet like that. But you do have to obviously shape it, sculpt it, and periodically refresh, review, shape because the thing will drift. But then I think, well, I drift too if I'm left to my own devices. I get slack. So, give it a good slap and examples of what good writing or good content looks like for your brand is very helpful for your AI. It says, "Oh, I can do that." So
Yes.
once
Yeah.
we train it properly, it's very, very helpful. And I think we need to move past that stage of going, it's terrible to use AI because the reality is we need to use it. It's coming. It's here. So,
Here, and it's probably not going away anytime soon. And if you can use it to your advantage to make as a small business owner, to make your life easier. I mean, a lot of small business owners, yourself, myself, others, we're one man, one woman show. And, we need that team behind us. And so it is
mm,
really important to be able to use those tools to our advantage,
mm.
and, but still do it in the right way.
And I see companies too, instead of cutting jobs, they're actually just increasing their volume, which means their current
Mhm.
employees can do more with the tools they've got. So it doesn't have to be this menacing thing. Yeah.
Right.
So you mentioned Uber Suggest for SEO. For someone, if they've never touched keyword research at all, what's the simplest way to start finding what their customers are actually searching for?
Yeah, so Uber Suggest is one of my favorite tools to use, partly because it's so inexpensive.
Yes.
I I was using SEMrush at, $150, $160 a
Yeah, I
month.
used to spend $850 a month on SEMrush for my user seats and all the
Yeah.
features, and I got very angry about that, and I don't anymore, so I've built my own, but go on.
Yes, that's a way to do it, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, but, I found that Uber Suggest it's a very easy tool to use and to understand, especially for a small business owner who is not really well-versed in SEO and maybe needs, just a little nudging and a little guidance, and from there, they can take that tool and run with it, and, I mean, it's very easy to go in and say, "Well, I think this might be what people are searching for to find my business." and plug that word or phrase into Uber Suggest, and it will give you tons of other suggestions of what people might also be searching for in that realm of keywords and phrases related to your business. But it will give you the search volume on a monthly basis, approximately how many people, I'll use the US as an example, how many people in the US are searching for this particular term on a monthly basis. And, it'll show you a difficulty score, and it's very easy because it's just, red, yellow, green. So if it's red, that means that there are probably a million other websites that are using that keyword, and it's going to be more difficult for Google to say, well, I'm going to pick you over this person. With over 2 billion websites on the World Wide Web, that's a little difficult. So search for the ones that are in green, the low hanging fruit that, might not have as much volume, but they're easier to rank for on page one of Google. And so I like that tool a lot. It also will give you suggestions on what people are searching for on AI. And so, there's a plethora of things that you can do with that knowledge. I mean, you could start creating blog content or you start, just kind of tweaking your website accordingly so that you start showing up on AI, which is really great. So I like that. And then there are, easy tools like just Google itself. You can go onto Google, you can plug in, you know, pet sitter near me, and then you can scroll down and it shows you people also ask for, and you can, get a lot of information just from that free tool.
There is so much that small business owners can do for free or cheap that doesn't
Yes.
take a lot of time, just a little bit of
Mhm.
focus. But once you know where to look, the gold is sitting there. And it
Right.
becomes a very powerful way to kickstart things and start to build the volume in your business. Yes. So you saw Marriott test entire room concepts before committing to a rollout. What did that teach you about how businesses should approach launching anything new?
Oh gosh, so much. I mean, it was my first visit to Marriott headquarters in Bethesda, Maryland, and they took us down in the basement. It's no longer in the basement. The actual the actual hub now is, I believe, like on the 57th floor of the adjacent hotel because they're in new headquarters now. But this design lab at the time was in the basement, and you go down there, and there were literally doors. There was a door for every single brand that Marriott had, and you'd walk through the door, and there's this room, this guest room that's fully built out. I mean, the only thing they were missing was plumbing, so they could invite guests and people to just kind of stay and maybe work for the day, but no one could spend the night. I think that they can now because it's in a hotel, but it was fascinating to again, that market research that a lot of people don't think about doing. Before you launch your product, just doing that, what we call in marketing, minimum viable product, your MVP, just getting something out there at its base to see what people think about it, to see how they interact with it, what they like, what they don't like, what frustrates them, the whole thing back to psychographics, and getting that feedback from people, from your customers. Marriott it was an ingenious idea to put all that together in the basement and to do that and to get that feedback from customers in real time. And so that they could make adjustments and they could tweak, okay, the bathroom lighting isn't great, because we brought, people in and women are doing their makeup and they're like, no, this is horrible. Or, the desk is too tall or what have you. And so they could make those tweaks. And in your early stages of launching, it's okay to pivot. And that's really what market research is all about. It's finding out what's working, what isn't working, and what do I need to fix, or do I need to pivot my business idea altogether? Maybe it's just not resonating at all. And I'm finding out, well, maybe they don't need, this, maybe they need this instead. And so that is something that really kind of stuck with me with Marriott, is their design lab and how innovative it was. But anybody could apply a market research. If you're opening a yoga studio, try doing yoga in the park, for 10 Saturdays to just see how potential customers interact with you and what kind of customers you're getting. Or if you want to open a restaurant, Try a food truck instead. Things that are just lower overhead, or maybe like a special chef's table where you're inviting people into a rented kitchen for the night. Just things that are lower overhead that you could still get your product or service out there, get the feedback from customers, but not spend a lot of money doing it. And then find out if you do need to pivot.
It's so important, isn't it? And again, you'll uncover some gold that you didn't expect. I had clients with some power assisted exercise equipment. Now testing a different market for it of people. So I said, "Do you mind if I phone the people who have tried it?" And one was used to be a model, and I said, "What do you think?" She said, "Oh, I love it." And I gave me all her feedback, and I said, "Do you mind if I put your name on the quote?" She said, "You can't do that." She said, "It's my dirty little secret. I don't tell my friends how I stay in shape." So you bet that became website copy from our anonymous source. But yeah, that feedback right at
Right.
the start was just priceless, and we wouldn't have had that if we hadn't just, as you say, talked to people while it was being tested out. So
Yes, that's
yeah.
right.
What's
And
the
you
most
don't
sorry, go
Oh,
on.
sorry, go ahead.
No, go.
Oh, I was just gonna say, you don't even have to be a new business. I mean, you could be an old business and still pivot with if you have, like, a new product that you're offering. And I think about Stanley, those Stanley mugs, that that are so popular, and they were actually selling horribly for the company, and they almost discontinued them. And what they found out is that they were just marketing to the wrong people, because Stanley, they were all about the workman and the outdoorsman, and people, dudes out in nature carrying the mugs and the thermoses. And what they found out is that it was women, busy moms in school pickup line, who needed these, big drinks that kept their, drink cold for the entire day. And so they had to pivot that whole thing and do market research and start, what am I going to do? I don't know who this target market is. So it's even a 100-year-old company can pivot. Anybody can do it. So
Yeah. Did you see how well they did? I guess the marketing term is newsjacking when that lady's car caught fire and the Stanley mug survived or was just bashed. I think it was just this great little ad. I think they sent her a whole new one or something, but they jumped on that very quickly, and which was
yes,
a masterstroke,
good,
obviously
good
our
for them.
marketing to jump on what was happening and push a little bit more
Yeah.
exposure out of it. Um, so business owners who know they should be doing something but haven't started, what's the most common kind of thing you hear from them about why they haven't started?
There's a few things. One is fear that someone else is doing it better. And that really goes back to competitive research and how important it is for people you have to see what your competition is doing. And if they are doing it better, you have to figure out how you're doing it differently. What is that differentiator? What is it that sets you apart? And, even if you have to go and spy on your competition to find out, what's going on, you could do social listening. You could, look at their reviews on Google. You could, follow them on social media to see what people are saying in their posts. You could go, sit in their store and pretend you're a shopper, whatever that looks like. But it really is important. And that's one thing that, people struggle with doing it. They're like, I don't want to do it because they might be doing it better. But it's really not about that. It's about that's the important factor, is how are you doing it differently or better than them? That's what you need to find out and get to the bottom of that. But that's probably the biggest one. Another one is just that whole imposter syndrome thing. I think I have enough knowledge to start this, but what if somebody asks me something and I don't know, but really it's just about, and I think back to someone I did a consultation with recently who is a master gardener and wants to start a business, but her concern is, well, I know all of the things, but what if somebody tells me what the scientific name is of this plant and I don't know what it is? But, it's not about that. It's, just being one step ahead of your customer. And, that's the key to expertise. And I think about, um, sommeliers. I love, going to a great wine bar and learning all about wine. I took some sommelier classes, but I love how much knowledge sommeliers have about wine and, the dirt and the vines and the fruit and all of the things. Um, and they still don't know everything. So it's okay. You don't have to know everything.
Huge relief for people with a good idea and they're scared to begin, who may be
Yes.
endlessly just making things just a little bit better. Like, how do you find that point where perfectionism sort of stops being quality control, and it just starts being avoidance? How do you tackle that with somebody?
I was speaking with somebody a couple weeks ago, and she was just on top of everything when it came to all of the analytics and all of the workflows and the foundational things. I was so I was so excited because that's not usually who comes to me. But her thing was I'm so overwhelmed and I don't know where to start. Plus the fact, that I have this imposter syndrome going on. What do I do? And and I said, well, you have all of these things. It sounds like what you need to do is go into a creative space and maybe start, working on your visual branding and your tone of voice and the things that are creative that are going to excite you because she was falling into this boredom thing of it, analysis paralysis. I've gone and I've done all the market research and I've analyzed everything and everything and everything. And it's just so much. Where do I go from here? And so she just needed some sort of spark just to boost her excitement again about starting a business. And sometimes, that's all it takes. So in her case, while I wouldn't say start with visual branding, I would never recommend that. But in her case, she had all of the things. And so I said, go with visual branding, get excited about your business and what that's going to look like in your tone of voice. And so that definitely lit a spark. So it depends on who it is and what they need and what motivates them. You have to find that motivating factor.
If somebody's listening to this and they have an existing business or a business idea and it's stalled, what would you suggest is one thing they should do this week?
Just start. That's the key, is just to sit down and say, on this hour, I'm going to go and claim my URL. And the next day, I'm going to take an hour and I'm going to sit down and think about um, my customer and what my customer might be thinking and feeling, and putting myself in their shoes, even down to the hour. What is my customer doing right now? Are they driving home? Are they sitting in car pickup line? Are they on their way to the yoga studio? Where are they? What are they doing? Just a little something every day um, can really help put a dent, because when people are overwhelmed, that's another big factor of stalling. And it's just starting to chip away at the little
Mm.
things.
I like it very much, just one thing at a time. It's the enduring wisdom, isn't it?
That was when I first started in marketing. One of my mentors, I was so overwhelmed, and she said, "Well, how do you eat an elephant, Michelle?" And I'm like, "Oh." She's like, "One bite at a time." I'm like, "Okay," and
Precisely.
that kind of stuck with me.
Michelle, thank you very much for your time. I'll definitely put your links in the description. How do you
Thank
prefer
you,
to be
Joe.
contacted if people are interested in working with you?
Yeah, email is great. Texting is great. Whatever works. I'm pretty flexible. I know everybody has their own kind of way of communicating, so I'm pretty open to all of it. Pick up the phone and we can chat any way it works.
I love it. It's like you're the mama who just makes it all better.
Spoonful of sugar.